Hello! We are starting a new art project at school, so I thought I'm gonna take you along with me to show you a little bit of what my painting process looks like. For this painting, I'm using medium density fiberboards, my favorite surface to paint on. I have already primed my board with 1 coat glue and 1 coat gesso, so now I'm just applying a thin layer of acrylic paint to give the surface some color, because having to paint on a white surface makes me kinda nervous. Besides that, having a toned canvas makes it easier with mixing the right values later on. Cheers! Something I did not know before is that it's not recommended to use a pencil when sketching for a painting, as after several years it may show underneath the paint. Thank you for my teacher for letting me know that, but now I had to erase everything and start all over again. This time with a dissolved acrylic paint and a brush, which made my sketch look much more loose than what I usually do. And that's when I decided that I'm gonna try to paint more freely this time. My goal was to be more loose and expressive with my brushwork in order to give my painting more life, as in my opinion my portraits often end up looking kind of stiff. I challenged myself by using a larger brush and quickly filling up the surface with the base colors. I tried to not focus on the details at the early stage of the process and be less careful and more bold with my brush strokes. One tip for those who focus too much on the details early on, like me, it's to see objects as if they were made of color blocks. Also, many artists squeeze their eyes to reduce the information, but that hasn't really worked for me personally. Otherwise, it was very fun painting again. I I forgot how much I like holding a brush, feeling the creamy texture of oil paints. Oh, it's such a familiar feeling. It felt so freeing. It felt victorious. I have unintentionally, life gets in the way sometimes, stopped painting for a few months. Well, almost a year actually. Thus, I thought I have forgotten how to paint portraits, but it turned out that painting already sits deep inside of me, and I just unleashed the skill of it back. And pleasure, of course. When I started painting, I have never thought about how to paint. I just simply copied what I saw on the picture. Many years later, I realized that to be a good artist, there is much more to it. Great artists do not paint thoughtlessly, they do not copy. There are many things to consider when you paint a portrait, for example. Oftentimes, the goal is to make the person look prettier without making them look like another person. Besides that, when composing a portrait, you have to think about lighting, shapes, composition, and much more. You have to consider many questions before actually starting to paint. This is something I'm still struggling with. As a realism artist, I'm used to painting exactly what I see. And I'm glad I realized that that is actually kinda boring. It is my personal opinion, so please don't take it close to your heart. For me, I've become more and more interested in realism combined with impressionism. I want my art to be realistic, but at the same time a little bit more loose in that matter. I want the painting to look alive, not frozen in one moment. I don't know how to achieve that yet, but I'm going to try to move in that direction, and this painting is my first little step. I've been following the work of several artists who I believe are masters of the skills I want to learn and improve in my own work. Some of the names are Jimena Acra, if I pronounce that right, Valerie Liu, and Paint Coach. All of them have YouTube channels, so I really recommend checking them out. But yeah, as I was saying, real art is much more than just copying the reality. I've gone to some kind of art schools as a kid for a shorter period of time, but I either haven't learned anything at all or I just don't remember anything. I have mostly learned how to draw and paint from YouTube, hence why I consider myself a self-taught artist. I have put many hours into practicing art, but I have missed the theoretical aspect of art, academic knowledge, if you will. Some of the things that I want to learn about are color theory. I know almost nothing about color theory. I just mix different colors that I think are gonna give me the color I see on the picture, and that's embarrassing. Anatomy. I think it's important to understand at least the basics of how the human body is built. Also, anatomy of the face. Paint coach calls it for the planes of the face, and this is really important when it comes to painting portraits. And the last thing on the list, as for now, are edges. Knowing and choosing when to have edges soft and when to paint them sharp and detailed. There are many more things to learn, but as for now, I want to focus on these four. I just realized that I totally forgot to talk about what, or rather who, I am painting. So here comes a little bit of the context. When I heard we're finally doing portraits, it wasn't hard for me to choose what to paint. I took this lovely picture of my grandma when I was visiting her in Lithuania last summer. It's one of my favorite memories. I took her to the park where we used to go when I was little, and there were many pigeons, one of them white. It is a very pretty and calm place. We were enjoying feeding the birds while my grandmother was also trying to catch the white pigeon. She looked like a child, so innocently happy. Unfortunately, she managed to catch only the gray pigeons. I think the white one was used to being extraordinary, so he became more careful of people. As we're beginning to come to an end, I thought I'm gonna talk a little bit of when to stop and call the piece done. For me, it's always a fight to keep some areas unrendered. There's always that urge to keep painting, keep rendering. Just this one little detail, the last brushstroke, and it just continues until I have lost all of the initial freshness. Sometimes it feels like a big challenge to stop and take a step back. But it is very important to remember the goal we have for the specific painting. And my goal for this painting was to be more expressive.